So today I will talk about the React library to build user interfaces on the front end. So we have learned so far HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, the three main pillars of front end development. But now we're going to go beyond that. And for the JavaScript part, if you saw from the previous lesson, there's a lot of problematic and tedious stuff that we have to do to manipulate the document. And what if we could deal away of that and actually build a system where that is all taken care for us, and all we have to do is focus on the basics, pretty much focus on declaring tags in a way that we do with HTML. And then we get the additional bonus of being able to use the JavaScript programming language at the same time. And that's the point of having a framework or library like React. Now, React is not the only one that allows you to do this. There are other ones like Angular, Vue.js, and many others. Okay. But React is one of the most popular ones, is the one we're going to do today. Now, before we proceed, we need to have a Node.js installed. So here's the website. If you go to nodejs.org, make sure to install it. The bundle also comes with NPM, the Node Package Manager, which allows you to install third-party packages, which is basically code that somebody else wrote and we want to incorporate into our project. Okay, with that said, so we're going to talk about React. So let's first install, generate a project with React, and then we talk more about it. Now, there's a lot of boilerplate. Just like HTML, we have to type all those tags, boilerplate. React has its own boilerplate to set up all the tooling and stuff like that. In order for us to avoid doing that, there's already something that somebody else built called Create React App. So we're going to use that to generate a project. So first I have to open a terminal window. You can either do that from your text editor like Visual Studio Code, or you can just open a standalone version. If you're on Mac, it's the terminal app, or iTerm2 if you have installed that. If you're on Linux, the same terminal. On Windows, it's either Command Prompt, PowerShell, Git Bash, or even Windows Terminal. Anyway, like I said before, if you want to find out if you have Node installed without an issue, you can open a new terminal window and type these commands, node-v and npm-v, and you should see the version number. Anyway, I have cd or change directory to my full stack web dev 3 folder, and I'm gonna use the command npx, which only works if you have npm, but it's npx, okay? Space create dash react dash app. That's the name of the package. We're gonna leverage the tool space, and then I'm gonna give a name to this project, and that will be the directory name. Let's call it web client, separated by a dash or lowercase. Now, it might take some time to install all the dependencies for the project and generate it. Okay. So basically what's happening is Node Package Manager NPM is downloading all of the source code that somebody else wrote and putting it in our local machine in a directory called node modules. And that way we are leveraging the work that somebody else already did, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time just to build a React application. So it's made the process really easy to get started with React. Whereas before, if you were to do it manually, maybe many people would get frustrated and they don't understand what's going on. So let's wait a little bit. You can see it's installing the React-DOM, React scripts, and CRA-template packages. By the way, these modules, they're downloaded from a registry, and the main one is called npmjs.com. That's the website if you want to go there and see what it looks like. It comes from there. Okay, you should be able to see all these hints of how to run the project. But nevertheless, we want to follow what it says. First, you want to cd or change directory to web-client like this. Make sure to do that first, otherwise not gonna work. Make sure you are in the directory web client, and then what you're gonna do is first you can open your source code with your text editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code. So what I do is I type code space dot to get it. Okay, I already have it open, so I'm not gonna do it. And then after that, you can start the development server. So we always have to start this command to power up the development server. So npm space start. Now this is going to run the server that will make the app available for us to access through the browser. Usually it opens the browser automatically for you. So it might take some time. While it's doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Visual Studio Code, explore the source code. So under web client directory, this is what the structure looks like. So we have this file called package.json, which every npm or Node.js project has. And this file has some metadata about the project. And it's particularly important, this property called dependencies. Each line lists a dependency that you have on somebody else's code. So their code is encapsulated in what we call it a package, or sometimes called module. So we are dependent on React library here. And the right-hand side is the value, and that's the version that's we're using. We're using React version 18.3.1. Okay, so this is basically a file that kind of holds a JavaScript object like we learned in the last lecture. Hence the name, the abbreviation JSON, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's a way of like keeping data in this specific format. Anyway, SRC is what we're interested in. Stands for the source code, is where all the source code is. In particular, you want to look at app.js and index.js. Index.js will be the entry point of how the React app is injected. And then app.js is the actual template for what you see on the screen. So let's look at the terminal again. The terminal says that everything's been compiled successfully. So you can go to your browser and access this link here. You can even control and click it. That works as well. It's basically you gotta type localhost colon 3000. Now this is like the domain. Usually in the actual production application would be like www.yourwebsite.com, something like that. And in this case, 3000 is the port number. Okay, let's go and check it out in the browser. So I'm going to open Chrome here, share with you. I'm going to open a new tab. I'm going to do localhost colon 8. Sorry, is it 3000, right? There you go. And this is the application that's loaded. It's the boilerplate that they add. If you want to inspect that by F12 elements, you can see what it looks like. So the whole React application is contained in this div element here. Here's the img, here's the paragraph, and so on. So let's talk more about React and what's new, what's so innovative. So previously we built HTML files, pages, right, with files.html like index. Let me put the live preview here. For those who don't know, I'm using Visual Studio Code extension live preview, and I installed the one for the first result from Microsoft here. And then I can do the live preview when I go to the Explorer, click index, and I do Control Shift P, or I click View Command Palette, live preview, show preview internal browser. I can see it on the side. So previously we built simple pages like this, starting from the entry point and index, which is the root. So I could go to like news.html here by clicking this link, and then I can go to sign in, and then I can go to the messages that I didn't have a link to, but it's basically messages.html and all that stuff. If you notice, there's a one HTML file for each page, and it's kind of tedious because it's always the same boilerplate for the doc type, HTML, head, some link tags are almost the same. So it's kind of tedious. Imagine a website has thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pages. This would be really hard. But if I want to change the header that appears in every single page, I would have to change like 10,000 files to change the same code, right? So that's not what we usually do in practice. We usually have a single page layout that defines the layout of the website. And all that changes is the main content. As you go about navigating the website, all it changes is the main content. So that's what we usually do. Now, let's talk about the concept that React introduced. So if you notice from the example we did for messages, this page here, we use JavaScript to actually inject a new message every time I type and click the button write message. And we did so writing code here in this function add message to list. And it's very tedious. It's programmatic programming of the user interface, which is kind of go against HTML, where we declare tags and declare what we want to see. So this approach has, you can imagine at scale, it's going to be really messy. This is a really simple website, and it's already kind of a lot of stuff going on here. So that can get messy really fast. So how do we approach that is like the goal of React to make this simpler. So we're gonna first have to understand the concept of single page application. So traditionally, when you have a website and you click a link, the browser will download the HTML file and then parse it and show it to you. So every single page would cause a reload, right? The page will be reloaded all over again. And then somebody along some time ago they said, okay, why you keep doing this? How about we make websites act like, for example, desktop applications? That's was what was more popular at the time. And they're so smooth. There's no this waiting. You click the link and then everything goes blank. You got a new page and everything goes all over again. So somebody had an idea, why not we use JavaScript to build the whole page on the user's browser side instead of us always having to rebuild it on the server side as we serve the page. So hence came the concept of single page application, SPA. So basically what you have is the first time you request a website, it sends you the whole HTML page, and then the browser, the client side, which is the person's computer, will be in charge of building the website from scratch using JavaScript. So usually you get a blank page from the server, and then the client will be make sure, okay, let's build all the message list, let's build all these comments, all these profile pictures, and so on and so on. So that's the goal there. And then when you want to show something else, like a different page, quotes, it's actually just manipulating the document and rewriting it and showing a different content by using JavaScript to remove elements, add new elements, and so on. But in this process, you're never really reloading the page. Never, ever. You're just asking the server for information. Hey, could you give me all these posts? Can you give me this link to the image I'm about to show? Something like that. You're never asking for a whole HTML page. So that's the concept of single page application. And it's important to understand that because I'm going to show you the difference in Chrome just now. So I'm in Chrome. I want to go back to the pages we built with plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This one, I want to open the source code. So right click, click view page source. And you can see, I can see my paragraph, hello. I can see my links and everything in the page here, right? So the server sent me this HTML file and it already includes all of the content. Great. Now let's look at the React application that we just powered up. This is the one. I'm going to close this and right click view page source. And if you notice here at the body, that's what people see. You only have this div with nothing inside. That's a div of the ID root. And that's what the server sends the client. You receive a HTML page that's blank. There's nothing. But when you see the actual page, there's something. What is going on here? It's because this whole thing was built after you received the HTML page using JavaScript. So if you were to open the live document preview with the dev tools under the elements tab, you actually see inside the root, if you expand, that's the whole app with a div and header and everything else. So this part of DevTools is the live view, which shows you the document as it is right now, which is different from the view source, which is the document file as it was sent from the server, okay? So that's why it's different. But nevertheless, the point is the single page application builds itself in a client. So that's what's going on there. Anyway, now that you understand that concept, we can move on and do some React and understand how it is built. Let's go here. So how are we going to build this with React? Well, what happened is we have this file index.js, and in this file, it's calling here get element by ID. Remember that? That's to find an element in the document by the ID. So it's finding that div of the root ID root, and it's injecting this app there. So React is doing all the work to build all that stuff for us. So we don't have to write the JavaScript code to do that. It's all delegated to the library or framework. Okay. So yeah, so there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes and you don't have to worry about it. The whole goal of using React is you focus on building user interfaces. You don't have to worry about how it's going to be built or constructed on client side. That's the whole point. React is always watching and seeing, and it's going to ask of you, hey, I want to know how you want this app to look like. What's the user interface going to show? And then I'm going to take that and compare with what I see in the browser. And if there's any discrepancy, React will just build it for us automatically. So we don't have to write all the JavaScript stuff. All right. So then there's this file app.js, and it's basically a file that contains a function definition called app. And that function returns something, and that something is a template that looks like HTML. So as you can see, there's a div, there's a header inside the div, there's an image, a paragraph, an anchor tag, which is basically what you see in the Chrome, right? If you recall here, let me share again. This thing is defined there in that return value for the function. Now, it might seem odd. This is a JavaScript file. Why do we have HTML in JavaScript? Well, actually, this is not HTML. It's called a JSX, okay? And it's basically, it's kind of like a front. They call it syntactic sugar. Behind the scenes, it's actually a function call in JavaScript to react.create element every time you create this tag here. But you don't have to know that because the whole goal for them to kind of hide that behind the scenes is so you can write it just like HTML. That's the whole point of React. Write it as though it's HTML. All right, so you can just start building stuff. With this, change the code here. Let's say I remove all that stuff. I just want a div. And I'll say a paragraph, hello world. And then I can add some random sentence, Lauren 10, tab. Oh, this is not working. Why? It's probably because not HTML. Hey there. Save that. And the great thing about using Create React App is when you save this file, you have like hot reload. So when you go and look at your browser, it's automatically reloaded for you. You don't have to click reload yourself there to see hello or hey there is there. Okay, so all you have to do React is create a function, and this function is called a component. Okay, that's what they call in React. In HTML, we have elements. In React, we call them components. It's like building your own HTML element. Okay, so let's try to build that messages thing with React. Let me put this on the, let me put that editor layout split down. So I have this file messages HTML that we built, and I want to write this in React. How would I go about that? Well, let's think about this. So let's create here a function. I'll call it messages. Notice I always capitalize the first letter, and that's important because it's a convention that we follow for React components, that the function will have the first letter of its name always capitalized. And then it's a function definition parentheses there. And I'm not going to put any parameters there yet. I don't need it right now, but usually there is. They're called props. Anyway, in this function, I always return the template for what I want the page or this piece of the user interface to look like. So pretty much you can just go to the message HTML to the body, whatever's between the open and closed body, except for the script. You don't want the script. You copy that and place it here in the return value for the function. And let me fix my indentation. Now there's some stuff we gotta change for React, so bear with me. So the first thing is I forget the, okay, the first thing here, this is messed up, is React is complaining. And if you have Visual Studio Code, it has this kind of extension. It's telling me there's an error. JSX expressions must have one parent element. So if I save this like that, I just want to show you what it looks like when it errors out. It's going to give me an error. So you can see that in the browser, and you can read that. There's an error in the file source /app.js, and it's telling you some stuff. And adjacent JSX, elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. Did you want a fragment? This is the suggestion to how to fix it. And it's basically telling you the line 7, there's a problem. Okay, I just wanted to show you this so you can see how to read the errors. But basically, a function in JavaScript can only return one thing. But in this case, you have like 1, 2, 3 things. So there are multiple ways to get around that. You can enclose everything in a div like this. That's one way of fixing it. And then they created a new way called a fragment. And the difference is the fragment doesn't introduce an extra intermediate div. Let me show you what that means. So here's the app running on open the DevTools with F12. And I'm going to click here to inspect this. And you can see there's the div root and the div of hello world, hey there. So this div is what we just wrote. So some people don't like to have this div. What's the point of having this extra div here? I can just get rid of it. So to do that, you can just use the fragment. You can say react.fragment. Oops, here, like that. And then you close the tag with the same name, like that. It's just like HTML. Now, because you're using something the JavaScript file doesn't know about, It's complaining, what is this? It's not defined. You have to go and import that. So usually at the top of the file, you see all these imports. That's the point of that. So you're gonna import React like this. So you're gonna define this symbol from somewhere. That somewhere is the React package from npm. On the You have to have the quotes. And how do I know this name? That's from the package JSON here, this name here. So if you need to import any of these things, you can just import whatever from the name here. Anyway, going back, now it's defined and it works just the same way, except if you look at the DOM here, let's see, did I save it? I have to save it first. We shouldn't be able to see that. What's going on? Is it cache? Let's see. Oh, it's because I didn't put that there yet. Sorry about that. So in order for us to use messages, we have to, just like HTML, we have to create a tag for that. So we're gonna go here, and where we have this div here, we're gonna add messages like this. Now you can type it like this, open and close tag. Let me try to backtrack here. So basically we define our kind of our own HTML element called messages, and we can use it with the open and close tag here under the app template. Now, because there's nothing that we need to place between the open and close tag, we can just shorten that like this. You see what I did? This is only React, okay? It's not HTML usually. So messages slash. I usually add a space just because it's finds nice. Okay, now if I go back and see Chrome, I should be able to see that div for the app and then message board, which is from messages form in the div there. If I didn't have the fragment, an extra div would be appearing there. If I put div here back, you see now there's, let's see here, save it. There's like this extra div here. But anyway, that's just a minor thing. Use whatever you think is nice for you. I don't mind the extra div. But that's the fragment. And you often see that as just empty tag like this. It's just a shortcut for fragment. Okay, just like that. Okay, so now let's fix the other stuff. So we brought the template, but now we don't have the class applied, right? If you notice, the style is ugly. How do we get that to be fixed? So for the style here in HTML, I have the link here. In the case of React, all you got to do is import that file. So we would, let me copy over message.css from source. I'll paste that to web client / source like that. So what I have to do in app is import quotes, and then I have to give the path to the CSS file. In this case, it's in the current directory, but for React, we need to say /, meaning the current directory is dot, and then / messages.css, semicolon. And then save that, and that should import that style, which basically is gonna do an injection of the style tag. If you go back to Chrome and look at the head, it's basically injecting a style tag here with the CSS. Now that's all done behind the scenes. We don't have to know how that is achieved, but behind the scenes, there's something called a bundler that takes care to bundle everything together and make it just work off the bat. Create React app uses Webpack. If you ever hear that term Webpack, that's what's being used. And there's one of the loaders that allows you to import CSS files just like that. And in this loader, basically it injects a style tag with the CSS content. It's all like automated for you, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, going back, we got the CSS. Now, how do we do the JavaScript part? Now, this is different now. Since we're doing React, the JavaScript is already in the JavaScript file. So we would have to basically write the code within the function here. Let's see what we did for JavaScript for messages. So we got some messages to show. Okay, so we have this array messages with objects, and each object has properties that contain the message we want to show. And then we are doing a loop here to go through each of those objects and then build a div that has that message and then the class message list item. How do we do that with React? Well, that's easy actually. You just got to go to where the message list is and you can just declare just like HTML. I have a div with the class message list item like this. And then we have some text inside that will be message.message. So we can just say message.message here. But we got to do some stuff before that works off the bat. First is when you have class here in React, we got to call it class name. Why do you have to change that? Well, the JavaScript programming language introduced the keyword class, so you can build classes. If you ever hear about object-oriented programming, that's what it's about. So in order to avoid clash with that, you can just say class name there. Now, obviously, it's going to work if you don't do that because there's probably something behind the scenes that gets around that. But usually, you should put class name. Okay, and now it doesn't know what message is, so we got to do a loop here. How do we loop in React within the JSX? Well, like we have to do a mapping operation from the array of objects to an array of divs. Yeah, so we're going to generate divs. But I have to explain to you what mapping is. So let's go to the DevTools, to the console tab. Let's go here. Let's start off with a list of numbers. Numbers equals an array, let's say 2, 3, 4. So let's say I want to make each of these numbers multiply by 2, and create a new list. That's called a mapping operation from one to another, one thing to another. It's a transformation. So I can do numbers.map. So it's a function call. And this function expects a function as an argument. So you can put a function definition there. And the parameter here will be the actual number. And then from this, you can return whatever you want. You can number times 2. And you got this new array with 4, 6, and 8. So each element was doubled. So what the heck is going on? Well, numbers is an array, and this array has a function that we can use called map, and it expects a function. So what's going to do is it's going to go for each of these elements. I will call this function that you provide, and number is going to hold the current element. In the first time, it's going to be 2. Therefore, it's going to return 2 times 2, and that new value will be placed in a new array like this in the same position as the corresponding one. So you add 4. And then the next time, it called the function again with 3. So 3 times 6, 3 times 2 is 6. So 6 is added to the new array, and so on, right? The next one is going to be number 4. So 4 times 2 is 8, and you get a new list. Okay, so that's what we're going to do, except we're going to generate new divs from the object. So basically going to have the messages, right, with objects inside, right? The object has a message, hello, like this. Oops. and then another object with another message, world. So we're gonna take that. Remember, it's an array of objects. We're gonna just map message.map function, and you can give any name to the parameter. I usually give the name whatever the element means, message, let's say message object. And then here we're gonna return whatever we want as the new thing. So you can see it's undefined there. So let's say we return message object.message. That's gonna generate an array of strings, but actually we're gonna return a div like this with the message there. That's what we're gonna do. Obviously, it's not going to work here, so we got to go to the React component. So let's go back there. So we're going to go here, and we're going to do that operation. Now, this return here is whatever I have here already. So we're going to have messages dot map a function message object. Let me just call that message here. And then we're going to return something that's the div. And I already have that here. And then I put the syntax. Let me fix the indentation. See, the indentation is important, otherwise kind of messy to see. And usually we add the parentheses for the return, so it's easier like this. Indent, 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 like that. And then this one there. Now, because we're in JSX, we have to add curly braces before and after that statement. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And then it doesn't know what message is. So we would go here before the return, break a new line, but still within the function, you want to copy the definition of messages here, put it there, like so. You can also put it outside the function, works as well. I think it's better outside, but we're going to change that eventually. That's just dummy data. Now, once we get that, let's see if it's working. So you can see we got hello world, another message, and hey up here. And if you look at the console, there's some errors saying that each child in the list should have a unique key prop. And it's just a complaint about React that whenever we have a mapping operation, always make sure that to add a key property, an attribute to the thing you're mapping here. So you have to add a key with something unique. For example, message.id is the unique part. Something that changes for each of the elements. If you recall, ID is unique to each. Okay. That makes sense. So in React world, we just can write the declarative way, and we can embed some JavaScript mapping here if we need to create new things from an array. Okay, I think that's it for that part. Now, how do we do the actual adding a message to the list from the text area? Now, that's a bit challenging. So if you recall in vanilla JavaScript, what we did was we type something here to the text area, you click write message. Now, this is a form. If you recall here, we have a form. When you click write message, that's the submit button, button type submit. It calls the function add message. So add message here in messages.js is called and prevents the default behavior so it doesn't reload the page. It finds the text area by ID. It grabs the element here. This one is just to check if it exists or not, the text area. If not, it doesn't do anything. So it calls this function add message to list with the value of the text area, which is what the user typed. And add messages to list, the definition is to create a new div, set the text content to that value that was typed, and then add a class to that new div, and finally inject the div into the list container, which is this one with all the kind of rectangles. Now the React way for that is first, let's see here. We have to find a way of knowing what the user typed for the text area. And to do that, we have to control this input and hold the value in a JavaScript variable. Now you could do the vanilla JavaScript way, which is get element by ID and then get the text area element dot value. But that's not the React way of doing things. The React way is you got to go here. Okay, we got this text area. We need to control it. So we have to pass two things. First is the value, and the second is the onChange for the handler function of the event. Whenever you type something in the text area, it will cause an event called change event. Now in vanilla JavaScript, to handle events is onChange lowercase, and then you pass a function name here, right, with the parentheses. But the React way is you have to use camel case for the name here. So you have to have the C capitalized. And then the equal sign, the right-hand side has to be with these curly braces. And then you have to pass a function name without parentheses. So in this case, let's say on message change. And I have to define this function here outside before return. So I function on message change like this. So it's different. You don't need parentheses here. And you have to use curly braces. But you might notice, oh, why did you use quotes here for ID and the name attribute? Well, that's actually implicit. I actually have to type curly brace there for the syntax for ReactJSX. But because if the value is a string, you can omit them and just put the double quotes. In this case, this is not a string at all. It's the name of a function. It's not a string, right? It's not double quotes. Otherwise, it would be literally that sequence of characters. Anyway, for the value here, we're going to store some, let's say, new message, a variable that we have to create. So we got to go here up and say new message or something for now, okay? Let me put hello here so you see it's going to appear there. Save it. Let's take a look. You see hello appearing there? But nothing is going to happen if you type, okay? Because we got to change things. We are now in charge of controlling what's going to happen when I type a character here. So we have to literally change the value of the variable new message. But you might be tempted to do it like this. When I click on message change, I type new message, whatever new is typed. But this is not going to work. And you can see if I type, nothing works because the React doesn't know about that variable. So the problem here is with React. So when you have to keep track of a value, React needs to know about it. Otherwise, it will not react to changes in the user interface. So we have to keep a state, a React state. So whatever we type in the text area has to be stored in the React state. So React keep track of what you're going to type there. Now, to do that, we're going to go to the definition of the variable that holds what the user types here. And we have to call what's called a React hook, H-O-O-K. That hook is called useState. So bear with me. So we're going to say react.useState. It's a function, and we're going to pass the initial value. So useState is a hook that allows you to keep track of a value. And the value initially has, if you pass something here to this function useState, that will be the initial value Okay, now this whole thing is a function that returns something. That something is an array of two things. The first element is the value itself. The second is a function that you can call to change the value. Okay, so if you need to change the value in the React state, you need to call that function. You might hear the term mutating the state. That's the mutating function, mutate function. Okay, so because of that, this new message variable will be something like this, like hello as the first element, and some function to change set new message like this. And there's a definition there that will change this value here. If you type like set new message, the world, it will change that to world. Okay, because of that, you would have to say new message sub 0 if you need to access the value. And you have to say new message sub 1, which is the second element in the array, to access the function, and you can call it with the new value. But this is ugly syntax, so people don't use this. What they do is they extract the first element into a new variable and the second element, which is the function, into a second variable. Okay, so you're gonna see this a lot, and to do that, the notation is like this. The const with the square brackets surrounding the thing, and then with two values, new message, and then set new message like this. So the first one is extracting the first element into the variable new message, and the second is extracting the function, which is the second element, into the variable set new message. Okay. Now with that, whenever we type something to the text area, it's going to call the functional message change here. So all you have to do is call set new message with this value. So let's do that. So we're going to do set new message, parentheses, whatever value the user typed, which you don't have yet, right? We're going to teach you how to do that. But let's just try that. So I'm going to click here, type A, and it changed to whatever new was typed, which was the value we passed to set new message here. Now, obviously, that's not what I typed. I typed A, so we want to correct that. And in order to fix that, we have to look at the event object. So here we're going to put event parameter. And then to access what the user typed, we can do event.target.value. So event object has a property called .target, and it accesses the text area itself. And the text area has an attribute value, right? So we can say .value. If you recall from objects, that's pretty much what's happening here. You're accessing the attributes of an object, the property of an object, with the dot notation. Remember, the right-hand side belongs to the left-hand side. Finally, let's test it again. We changed the code. We always want to test it. Let me type A here. There you go. Now we have A, B. I'm going to type C. Now it's correctly showing it. Every time I type a character. Okay, let me show you the dev tools, how to debug this, so you can see what's actually happening in real time. So I click Sources tab in Chrome. Firefox might be debugger. Control P. And we're gonna do, let's see, what's the name of the component file? App.js, right? So we're gonna look for app.js there. Enter. Now here's the source code for that. And we're gonna, okay, I wanna know what's happening when I press write message. So when I press write message, it's a form, right? Submission. This is the, let me see, I think that's might be the wrong thing there. That's not what I want, sorry. When I type here, we're not in the submission yet. So when I type here in the text area, it's calling on message change. So I have to go here. This is the function. I put a breakpoint here. So that means I want the program to stop here when that function is executed. So if I were to type A, it calls this function here, so it stops the program there, so you can inspect what's going on. If you hover over event, this is the event object that has all the information. And if you look at target, the value is the text area itself, if you see highlight there. And you can expand that target, and there's a value. If you click the value, it's what the user typed. Okay. So that's what's happening here. If I look at, let's see if I can see what's new message is. Let me see. Tried it. I press control back tick. So you can also type JavaScript here, like event.target. See, it points to the text area. Event.target.value. You can also do that if you don't like just pointing the mouse around. Let's see if this is working. Yeah, usually it doesn't work here. Let's see. Anyway, you can press play to keep going. And once you're done debugging, you can remove the breakpoint. So that's how you debug a React. Just the same way as JavaScript. You just got to find the right file there. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's just quickly do the, let's see, I guess, submission. So for the unsubmit, we got to change things, right? JavaScript, we have to use camel K, so capital S, and we need a curly brace, no quotes. And we don't call the function here. We have to remove the parentheses. So we just have the function name. And then you define the function outside before the return. Don't define it inside the other function here, okay? It has to be outside that body. And add message, event, like this. Now let's copy what we did. Let's see what we did for previously, just back in track to messages.js. That would pretty much prevent default, copy the value that the user typed, and add message list, which would create a new div, and then you would clear the text area. Okay, in React is like this. So, okay, how do you find what the user typed? Well, we have the variable new message. So you can just say new message and you get whatever the user typed. Great, now I have to add that to the list of messages here, to the end as a new object here, like this, right? ID, whatever, it could be for, message, whatever user type. But the problem is, how do I do that in code? Well, I have to also keep track of this in the React state so that when I add a new message, React will reactivate and see, hey, I noticed a new message was added to the list of messages. Therefore, I must update my user interface to show the new message. When React detects a changing state, it actually calls the function for the component again and returns the new view template with those new values. Okay, so how do we keep track of messages in the state? Well, we're going to use state. So locate the value you want to keep track of and put that under parentheses here and call react.useState. And this will be the initial value, right? The array of things. And then because it's two things, we got a destructure. This thing is called destructuring when you extract the first and second element. Not necessarily first and second, but any number. And usually we always call the variables name and then set name. It's just a naming convention. We could call this whatever. Doesn't matter. Okay, so when I need to update my list, I want to call set messages. So let's go down here. So I want to set messages, but messages is an array of objects. So I must first take care of keeping the existing messages and adding a new object to the end. So to do that, I'm going to make an array, square brackets, copy the elements from the messages that already exist. To copy it, we use ... within the square brackets and the name of the array, messages. And that would just copy all of these into this new array. And then comma at the end, you can add the new object, which is curly brace to make an object. And then with the message, whatever the user type, which is the new message variable here. Now you can give an ID if you want, but I would leave it out. It's probably going to complain, hey, what's the ID? So we got to figure out what's the last one. But when we have a database later, we won't have to worry about that. Anyway, save that. Let's see what happens. Say hello there, write message. You see something happen there. I saw it momentarily. And we have the same problem we had before where the page reloads. So we have to prevent a default. So we got to go back to add message. We got to say event.prevent default to say, hey, form, I know you want to submit the traditional way to reload a page after submission, but I don't want it to do that. Remain the same page. Don't do that. So prevent default. Let's try again. Hello. Oh, there you go. If I type hello too, it's there. Now we want to clear this every time we add a new message. So we can go there after setting the messages. We can change the value of new message, which is what the user types into the text area by saying set new message to an empty string, which is just 2 quotes with nothing between. And whenever I add a new thing, it will clear the text area. It's probably nicer if you add the message to the top. It's easier to see without having to scroll. So if you want to do that, all you have to do is move this object here before the ... messages with a comma. So that way you first put the new message at the top and then the other copied ones at the bottom. So why does this work, right? Because when I add a new message, I call set messages, that changes the state, right? This is a state change function. When I change the state, React will call the function to render the template for the component again. So that means the function here is called again under this template, and it will notice, hey, messages now has an extra element at the bottom. So it's going to basically map, but now with the messages having that new extra element at the bottom, now at the top, right? So it's going to generate that new div, including that new one. Now, what happens behind the scenes in React is we have the live document in HTML, right? And we have the React keeps a copy of that. So when you change the DOM, what's called a virtual DOM, React notices, hey, something changed in the state, and I rendered this new tree of the document, and it has this change. There's a discrepancy between what the user is seeing in the browser and what we are keeping track of. So we have to do some work to make them synchronous. So React will change the actual document to reflect its virtual DOM, whatever is now the new what should be shown. So that's what's happening behind the scenes. Okay. So what else we got? I think that took care of pretty much all the things. We got ABC. Now should go to the top. It's here. Okay, so that's how we do things in React.